So, today we are going to talk about one of the big hard truths that we both feel passionately about. And that
hmm
is the idea that action has to come before confidence. And I think, through our conversations, both of us realize the idea that growing up, you're flooded with the word confidence. You need to have confidence in what you're doing. You need to have the confidence to go do something. And I think both of us have felt the idea that that can hold us back in some ways or, make us afraid to start because in reality, the truth is you need to start. You need to take the steps, do the action in order to get the confidence.
Absolutely, for sure. We grew up thinking that people are just born confident, or like you have to build your confidence first, and it's some miraculous event that happens, and you feel, okay, I'm ready to do something. But that's not at all what really happens. And
No,
we both had experiences where we kind of just you learn as you go, right?
exactly. And the idea that you're just going to wake up and feel confident to do something. I think growing up, I was a pretty reserved kid and I probably took zero risks growing up. And looking back, I mean, there's probably lots of factors as to why that was the case, but a big one for sure would have just been being so reserved and not confident in myself. Over the years, I definitely grew my own confidence just in who I was, but that took work. That didn't just happen. That wasn't overnight. And
Mm-hmm.
I look back and think of the things I probably missed out on because I didn't take those steps. I didn't just go for it. And it wouldn't have been until my 20s when I started my first business that I look back even now, 20 years later, I look back at that and I think, how did I do that? Like, how did I have the confidence to do it? And I guess the truth is, I really didn't. It wasn't like business had no, that wasn't in my head at all.
hmm
But I had a goal. I wanted to help people. I wanted to do something and open a space where I could do what I wanted to do to help the families that I was working with. And so I just went for it and I did it and ended up being successful with it. But there were a lot of missteps along the way, at the beginning, especially. A lot of times that I had to pivot. I was able to surround myself with supportive people, which really helped. But ultimately, I had to take the steps. Ultimately, I had to make the mistakes and come back from the mistakes, learn from them, and continue to take those steps forward. And after 20 years, I could say I'm pretty confident in that
hmm
industry, in that field. I was, at the end, before I sold the business, I was still confident that I could do this. Like this was, home to me now. I was so comfortable in it. But again, when I look back, there was no way that was how I started. I just had a vision and my values, and I took those steps.
I love that you said that, you made mistakes along the way, because I think that's what we need to normalize. Like I know I grew up with feeling like I needed to do everything perfect. And that's what held me back was like, oh, if I there's a chance that I could fail or that I could do something wrong or look silly, I did not want to do it. And that can be like just paralyzing. And I think just normalizing, you need to make mistakes. That's how you grow. That's how you build. That's how you like move forward and learn. And it's okay. And we all can do it. And as long as you're taking those steps towards your goals, towards your values, then there's a light at at the end of the tunnel, and it's worth it.
Well, and think of the phrase, I think, I don't know if you heard it growing up, but I know it was always in my head. Practice makes perfect, right? That's
Yeah.
such a common phrase. And I think there's a big shift now. And I know with the kids, I teach them a lot. Practice makes progress. The more you
hmm
practice, the more you do something, the more you progress at it. It doesn't mean you're ever going to be perfect.
hmm
And so it's funny, these little things that come up, but that idea, practice makes perfect. If I'm a perfectionist, and I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist by any means, but I agree with the idea that I don't fail. I don't do something unless I felt really comfortable in being successful doing it.
hmm
And so the idea of failing at something can really hold you back. I'm not even going to bother starting. And so when you flip the switch on practice makes progress, the idea that these small actionable steps continues me down that path to where I want to end up, and that you're constantly making those steps,
Hmm.
it takes a bit of the pressure off, I think, right?
Absolutely. Hmm.
That feeling of I have to get this right. And then when you remove that, then you can open yourself up to this confidence, right? Okay, I can do this. I can keep taking these steps. And it's not that you're ever going to be 100% confident in whatever you're moving towards, but you're going to be confident in your ability to continue to take those steps. And I think that's what's really key.
Absolutely. Hmm. Yeah, and for me, that's my thing is how I do move forward when I'm terrified, which is most of the time, taking a big step, but is preparing. For me, I know if I'm doing a presentation and I'm scared to make that presentation, if I memorize or have like practiced enough times that I know at least what I'm gonna say, then I'll feel more confident. Then I'll have that confidence and I can go through it. And again, I'm gonna stumble over my words and I'm gonna have these moments. But the
Right.
more and more I do, the more I take these little steps to prepare, to make sure I do a little bit more research that I know the topic in and out, then I build that confidence and I can do it more confidently and just and build that up in myself. And so for me, I decided to go back to university, you know this, 10 years after going to high school. And that was a big step out of my comfort zone because I was worried that I'd go back and I'd be so behind or that I didn't have like these hard topics, chemistry, calculus back in my mind and I'd fall behind. And I wanted to get good marks and I was focused on like doing really, really well. So I knew that my end goal, I wanted to do this. I wanted to get my Bachelor of Science, but I was terrified to take those first few steps. So for me, the first little thing I could do was how do I prepare myself? Okay, well, I'm going to go to the campus, make sure I know where all my classes are. That's going to be the first thing. So I'm not stumbling around the first day.
And reduce
Then
that
I
stress, that added
Exactly one
worry.
little thing,
Yeah.
one little step. And like that made a difference. So I knew where everything was. Then I started going through my high school notes. Like, let me review my chemistry. Let me review my calculus. I even hired a calculus tutor because I did not want to have to jump back into that blindsided. So these little steps made me feel like, okay, I can at least take that now, the next step, which is going to my first class. And granted, I did well in some classes, and then I almost failed calculus, regardless of having a tutor. But that again just gave me like, okay, that's one setback, but now I know that I need to study a little bit harder. Now I know I need to do this. And
Yeah.
it was hard, but it also gave me that confidence that like, okay, got through my first year. I did okay. Now I know what I need to do to move forward.
When it's almost like the stumbling blocks, making it through them and being like, okay, the world didn't end. We're
Yes.
okay. So that
Yes.
mistake, that, almost failing calculus, reinforces the idea that I can do it.
Yes.
That getting over that quote unquote failure, if you want to say it was, helps
Yeah.
you step forward. Failure is probably the wrong word, but getting over that piece of, that pivot, that mistake, that it didn't
Mhm.
work, and being able to take the step forward is where the confidence starts to really grow, right?
Yes.
It's not even being successful. Oh, look, I did this well. That's kind of a fallacy that that's the confidence. I think it's the mistake, the part that didn't work, then saying, okay, but we can keep going. That's when that
Hmm.
confidence really grows. And the idea that you can take those steps in the face of those mistakes and those challenges that pop up. And so here's a good example. How about both of us? You have 3 kids, I have 2 kids. I
Yeah.
don't think either of us were super confident to become moms.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't know, and maybe a lot of people do take a lot of time to plan that, but if that is your goal, right? If family is important, you want to have a family, a lot of times we just go for it and figure it out along the way. Like
Oh my
all the
gosh.
mistakes and
Yes.
all the oops and like, oh no, how much did I screw up here? And you keep going. And I think that's probably one that you have to do it. And
Yeah.
learn that those mistakes are going to happen and that life continues on. And as long as you're putting the effort in there, you love your kids, you're continuing to become confident and move in that direction. And so there's so
Hmm.
many, it's not just business or going back to school. There's so many aspects where taking those steps first really helps to build that confidence in the
Oh
long.
yeah, think about like stepping into a gym. If
Yeah,
you're not used to going to a gym and your goal is to be healthy and you want to, embark on this healthy journey, that could be really intimidating. Like, how do I get healthy without like stepping into this gym with lots of people who know what they're doing? That could be so paralyzing.
right.
And maybe the first step isn't going to be stepping into the gym. Maybe it's taking a little step and starting to work out at home or going for walks or like there's other little ways too that can help build your confidence before you again, like you said, it's not this big giant step that you have to take. You could take these little steps to help you get to that big goal.
Right. And to move in line with whatever the vision is. And maybe you never end up going into the gym, and that's okay
Yeah.
too. You're
Yeah.
still taking the steps in the direction of that goal, that vision, that value, and
Hmm.
building your confidence along the way. For me, yoga teacher training was a big one. So
Hmm.
but it was a bucket list. I'd been at the studio for a couple months. I barely knew anybody. It wasn't like I had been there for years. And something pulled me to do it. Again, I look back and I think, who was that person? It blows my mind because it was completely out of my comfort zone. But I
Hmm.
remember sitting there at night and saying, okay, I'm going to do this and going to put my credit card in. And they didn't accept the credit card I was using. And I was emailing the instructor who's in charge of it, and he was so great responding. And he said, just come in next time you're in the studio, we can do it. And I knew if I
Oh.
don't do it now, I'm not going into the studio next time and saying, here, let's do this. I knew I would back out. So I was like, nope, I need to use a different credit card. And I put it through because if I didn't pay in that moment, I wasn't going to take that step. I had no confidence in myself that I could do this. I'd never taught yoga. Like I hadn't even thought about teaching yoga. And
Hmm.
so I had to put that in. And then it was just these series of steps that I had to take. And literally every weekend that we were there going through the training, it was messy. It was, out of my comfort zone, nothing but one foot in front of the next. And it ended up being this really amazing experience that if I hadn't taken that first step and put the credit card in that night, I never would have had. And now look at where we are and what we're doing and what we're trying to build. So,
Hmm.
I think it's the idea that there is a point of you just have to do it. But like you said,
Hmm.
you don't have to do the big, massive end goal. You do the small step and build the confidence and pivot and be comfortable with that first. And
Hmm.
it's amazing where it can take you.
Absolutely.
One of the big quotes in teacher training was, you need to show up and suck before you can shine. And I loved it. It
I
just
love that.
Right? It's so true. It's everything in life. You need to show up and suck before you can shine.
Yeah, let's normalize being messy and being stumbling over life and making mistakes. It's funny because, with social media, they say you get the highlight reel of people's lives. So I think you kind of forget that, like, oh, this is what people are living. This is how people are. And it's like, that's not real. We know what real is. Like, everyone makes mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, then you're not living. You're not moving forward. You're not growing as a person. So
And learn.
mistakes are good. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. It's all good. Let's laugh at ourselves. And
Yeah, just do it and take those steps and build the confidence by doing. Take those small, actionable steps towards your vision, your goals, your values, and
mhm,
it would be amazing to see what comes from it.
mhm.
I love it.
Yeah.